No time to lose if we want to live. You are all here because at some point on your journey through life, you looked at the science and what our politicians were doing, or not doing as the case may be, and you were filled with horror that our government is not telling us the truth about the dire state the world is in. And you were filled with rage at all the lies and euphemisms and the fact that future generations are being robbed of their very right to exist. So you made a decision to stand up, to become a rebel and join Extinction Rebellion, to demand that governments across the world act now to preserve life on our precious planet. In less than 2 years, we've all seen Extinction Rebellion do amazing things, like driving a pink boat into Oxford Circus and occupying central London for 11 days. Together with school strikes, Sunrise Movement, Greta, David Attenborough, even Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, our efforts have brought about a substantial change in news coverage. They've started to tell the truth, and they have started to pay attention to the urgent nature of the climate and ecological emergency. And now, the vast majority of the UK public are in favour of rapid action to reduce emissions. In the process, we have built an amazing and inspiring international movement. We've all made new friends, formed communities, participated in acts of rebellion that were filled with love and joy. We've supported each other and learned from each other through protests and long meetings and art sessions and courtrooms. Our work has been experimental and full of learning, mistakes, flaws and imperfections. Nobody has the secret recipe to achieve our goals. So this is work you have all been undertaking with care and humility, but also boldness and courage and finding the strength to face this, the bravery to risk trying to change things, and the tenderness to support each other through it as we strive for a regenerative and compassionate culture. But, in spite of all we have done, we have to face the cold hard truth together. Despite our achievements, we are still on a path towards disaster. The world's governments are still hell-bent on economic growth at all costs. Lockdown is but a blip on the ever-increasing rise of greenhouse gas emissions. Species decline is accelerating, unravelling the web of life. We are still living under this toxic system which exploits everyone and makes us all complicit. And people in the global south and in marginalised communities are still paying the biggest price for the lifestyles of the few. People know this truth. The government is failing to do what's necessary to keep us alive. They ignored the warnings about coronavirus and let tens of thousands die. The social contract between the government and its citizens is broken. Enough is enough. We have an opportunity now, as we emerge from the pandemic, to make the change necessary. But business as usual is fighting to regain its hold, and we cannot let that happen. We all know that carbon dioxide is on the rise. The world will keep heating up as long as we keep emitting greenhouse gases, and it won't stop until emissions fall to zero. The longer that takes, the more permanent damage is done to humans and ecosystems everywhere. Right now, we are presently 1.1 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial average temperatures, and we are already seeing the devastating effects of climate change. In the last year alone, we have seen more than 1 billion creatures burned alive in the Australian bushfires. 1 billion creatures. More than 20% of forests were eviscerated, and it's important to note that many climate scientists were not predicting so many fires until the end of the century. It's only 2020, and that's just one country. 2019 also had exceptional fires in the Amazon, Siberia, Alaska, Indonesia, and the Congo. Even the UK had more fires than any other year on record. Our planet is literally on fire. And what did Greta Thunberg say to do when your house is on fire? Panic. Right now, our oceans are being heated with the energy of 5 atomic bombs exploding per second. The poles are heating up much more quickly than the rest of the Earth. It was 39 degrees centigrade in the Arctic Circle at the end of June, and down south, the Antarctic is warming at 3 times the global average. Or consider the biblical plagues of locusts that are swarming across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East as we speak, annihilating the crops and food for millions of people. People who are the least responsible for carbon emissions, and they continue to pay the highest price. All of this is happening already with only 1.1 degrees centigrade of warming. And the Climate Change Committee, which was set up by our own UK government to advise on the climate, has just released a report warning of a possible 4 degrees centigrade rise. What exactly does 4 degrees of warming mean? To put it into perspective, during the last ice age, the Earth was 4.5 degrees cooler than it is today. That ice age world is one we would not recognise, because 4 degrees meant a lot of difference, and we are looking at an Earth that could be 4 degrees warmer in just 80 years' time. That is a future most climate scientists find difficult to even contemplate. Professor Johan Rockström has said that in a 4-degree warmer world, it's difficult to see how we could accommodate 8 billion people, or maybe even half of that. It will be a turbulent, conflict-ridden world. He's suggesting that the planet might only be able to sustain half the people it does now. When Professor Kevin Anderson was speaking to the UK Department for International Development, he told them there is a widespread view that a 4 degrees centigrade future is incompatible with any reasonable characterisation of an organised, equitable and civilised global community. So, we are talking about floods, droughts, wildfires and crop failures which are so bad that we could face social breakdown. And sadly, our government appears to have been unmoved by Professor Anderson's warnings. Remember the fights over loo roll at the beginning of the lockdown? Well, imagine what it will be like when crops start failing and the entire supermarket is empty. And it's not things like we'll be going along fine and then one day the planet will wake up at 4 degrees warmer. No, to get there, we would have to go through the devastating effects that will come with 1.5 degrees of warming, and then 2 degrees and 3 degrees, hotter and hotter each year, with disastrous consequences, not only for humans, but all creatures on this planet. If the worst case scenario is allowed to happen, it will be a tragedy beyond comprehension. A tragedy, but also a crime, because this is not an accident. It's not a natural event. This is totally and utterly preventable. There are powerful forces holding back meaningful action. Corporations, lobbyists and climate denial networks, all of which have more sway over our government than we, the people, do. The climate and ecological emergency is happening because this government, right now, is making a conscious decision to let that happen. And yes, we are letting the government get away with it. We all knew this before today. This realisation is what brought us into Extinction Rebellion in the first place. That horrible feeling in our guts and in our hearts that those we care about the most will face a total and endless hell. And this fills me with horror, anger, terror, and it keeps me awake at night. And I think it probably keeps us all awake at night. I'm filled with such an outrage at the future we are creating for our young people, our children and grandchildren. And when it comes down to it, this is why we joined Extinction Rebellion. We are here to face up to the reality and to face up to our responsibilities. We must act in collaboration and solidarity with our global family. We are filled with rage, but a rage rooted in deep love. deep love for this beautiful jewel of a planet, deep love for all of Earth's creatures who have not caused this climate disaster, and deep love for humanity. The tragedy that all of this is facing destruction is almost unbearable. So, extinction. Do you now feel the reality of it in your gut? What's the other half? Yep, rebellion. The choice is extinction or rebellion. It's not about writing letters, we've done that. It's not about an email or a petition, we've done that too. No, what Extinction Rebellion is about is rebellion. And so we are planning a big and beautiful rebellion at the end of the summer, with opportunities for everyone to rebel in the way which works best for them. There are 4 days of regional rebellion starting on Friday, the 28th of August, with banner drops and themes around HS2, airports and aviation, and bank bailouts amongst the actions. And then, beginning on the 1st of September, we will return to the streets of London, Cardiff and Manchester in rebellion, using our bodies and maybe a little bit of super glue to express our rage at a system which has failed so many. In London, as MPs return from the summer recess, we will demand that Parliament begin the process of putting the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill into law, which would make a citizens' assembly a fundamental part of government for the first time in UK history. Justice and anti-racism will be at the heart of this rebellion, and we will work hard to make it the most inclusive and participatory rebellion the UK has ever experienced. In addition to mass participatory civil disobedience, some affinity groups will design their own actions to contribute to the rebellion, and others might do things like slow marches to tie up traffic around Parliament. Throughout all these rebellious activities, there'll be a digital rebellion for all those who are unable to join us physically on the streets. And our message is clear. There can be no going back to a system of government that allowed tens of thousands to die for nothing during COVID-19. There can be no going back to a system infected with racism, which marginalises so many people in our different communities. And there can be no going back to a system which is driving us off a cliff edge to extinction. We have announced this rebellion at a challenging time, given the ongoing pandemic. But time is running out. We've already shown that effective action can be taken whilst maintaining social distancing, and we will use our creativity to design safe and effective actions. We know why XR became the #1 global influence on the climate in 2019. And it was not by sitting in meetings, not by having nice chats with politicians and making polite statements. We know why. It's the one thing. And that's because we broke the law in numbers that have not been seen before in British history. Because we decided enough is enough, and we changed the national conversation. We did that because we decided to break the law, peacefully, respectfully, but with absolute grim determination. 30 years of petitions and marches haven't stopped the emissions increasing. So this is the choice left to us: to rebel, to engage in peaceful, non-violent civil disobedience. In the dire emergency we face, civil disobedience is the only thing that might work. Some of us will do creative and inspiring actions to draw attention to government and corporate entities which prop up our morally bankrupt system. Some of us will risk arrest, and some of us will help look after them. We will bring them blankets and sing songs to keep up their spirits, explaining to passers-by why this is the only choice left to us. Some of us will give talks to educate ourselves and others. Some of us will wait outside the police stations. Some of us will make food for hundreds of hungry rebels. Some of us will build and decorate beautiful things or keep the accounts. What's important is that we will all be doing it together for the same cause, for the same planet. We know that getting arrested is not an option for many people, but some of you might want to break the law to stand up for the future. Maybe you've been waiting. Maybe you've been thinking you might do it at some indistinct point in the future. And I'm here to tell you today that the time is now. The time to step up and stop extinction is now. When you look back on 2020 during the century's first great pandemic, what do you want to tell future generations? That you attended a few meetings and marches? Or that you joined with brilliant people to do whatever you could to support life and the future? Have any of you ever wondered what you would have done if you'd been alive during the time of the suffragettes? Or if you had lived in the American South during Rosa Parks' time? We are making history right now. You are living this emergency now. This is our time to act. I'm not going to go quite quietly, gently into that good night. I'm going to rage against the dying of the light. And I'm asking you to stand with us. Finally, rebellions cost money. And the truth is we're struggling to fund the essential stuff that keeps our movement alive and growing. There are many people who support XR's aims, but may not physically join the rebellion. So we ask you to share this donation link far and wide on your personal social media pages. We know times are hard and not everyone will be able to give, but if you can help, the very best way to fund the rebellion is with a monthly gift. I'll share the donation link in the chat, and thank you very much for what you can give. Please also fill out this form so we can keep you up to date with everything that is happening. So that'll be put in the chat as well. Okay, so that's the talk. You know the message. We've got to get it out there. The time is now. If not us, who? If not now, when?